Skeleton Crew understands Star Wars in a way that a lot of other Star Wars shows or movies haven't necessarily done in the Disney era, simply because welcome back to This is the Wayseekers, a podcast for Star Wars fans by Star Wars fans. My name's Austin SWE. I'm here bringing in the new year to talk Skeleton Crew with my first mate, Scotty Holiday. Scotty, it's almost like you're a time traveler because you're in 2025 and I'm in 2024 still.
Yes, Happy New Year from the East Coast.
Yes, Happy New Year from This is the Wayseekers. We're so happy to be recording the first episode of This is the Wayseekers in 2025. And that's not really our decision because, Lucasfilm thought that Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve were fantastic days to release Star Wars. I'm sure that it's great for people that are just watching and, having fun with the show. But for podcasters, this fucking sucks.
Yeah, I'm sure it's very fun to sit around with your family and have a nice holiday time, but I'm just like, damn, I'm exhausted and but we're still here and we've got a really fun episode to talk about.
Yes, absolutely. A very heartwarming episode too, I think. And I'm sure, you're the more sentimental one, so I think that you definitely agree with
I'm
that.
the more sentimental one.
Well, let's not get into this argument right now. But Scotty, what episode of Skeleton Crew are we talking about today for the first episode of This is the Wayseekers in 2025?
So we're talking about episode 6, Zero Friends Again.
Very sad. Also, the shortest episode title because all the other episode titles have been a full fucking sentence.
I didn't know what to expect from this title, but it wasn't what I expected.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really know what I was expecting. Did you have any expectations off of the title going into it?
Not off the title so much, but it's funny you bring up expectations because obviously last episode we had the kids escaping and Jude picking up the lightsaber, and it almost seemed like he was going to go after the kids with the lightsaber. The lightsaber did not even show up at all in the episode. And so I almost feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect. It definitely didn't align with my expectations. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but I'm also kind of like, what was the point of having this big cliffhanger just for it to never really go anywhere?
Well, it's still hanging on the cliff.
You think so? I mean, because they're both
I think so.
They're both off of Lanupa now, and I think that the only time they're ever going to see each other again is when they both ultimately arrive to Atten on their own.
Correct. And then the Jedi Temple is going to rise out of the ground and some old Jedi, will come out and fight Jude with the lightsaber, or Darth Plagueis will come out of the tower.
Okay.
And it's going to be a really, really intense finale.
I've
got all the insider information.
All right, Mike Zero. But I think you actually have my gears turning a little bit there because if your theory turns out to be true, that the supervisor's tower ultimately ends up being a Jedi temple, what if in order to access that you need the golden lightsaber that Jude is now in possession of?
That would be very High Republic, with the vector ships.
Very High Republic, and it would ultimately align with Scotty Holiday's theory. So
that's the most important part.
Well, I think we should get into the actual episode discussing what we thought. It was the shortest episode of Skeleton Crew, I believe, but it was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. My favorite, I was going to say our favorite director, but I don't know about you, but my favorite director of the entire Mandoverse. Pretty much every episode she's directed of The Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett has been an absolute banger. We have The Sanctuary from The Mandalorian Season 1, or was it The Sanctuary? The episode with O'Mara and the entire grass field.
I think so.
Yeah, I think
that's the one I thought of when he said The Sanctuary. I was like, right. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Book of Boba Fett, even though it's a Mandalorian episode, I still think it was the best put together episode of the Book of Boba Fett, the one prior to the Luke Skywalker episode.
I feel like Bryce Dallas Howard does really great with bringing out emotion in
Yes.
the episodes she directs,
Hmm.
and that's definitely something that I look forward to. I didn't know going into this episode that she was the director
Hmm.
because I don't really know directors like that.
Right.
Um,
But once it
but
was all said and done, you were like, okay, yeah, that
I
was
was like,
Bryce.
of course, she directed this episode. Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah, because we get all those beautiful moments with KB, a character that we've said needs some development. So, Bryce
Mhm.
Dallas Howard, thank you for coming through. Are you ultimately happy with the development and revelations we got with KB about how she was in an accident and, her health issues ultimately catching up to her?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I don't even know if I'd call it. I almost feel like it was under the guise of either a health issue or like a disability
Hmm.
or something, and it kind of talk to both,
Hmm.
and I really enjoyed that just for the representation that we got on
Right.
screen, and to hear this character be like, I'm different, I can't do things that
Mhm.
Fern can do,
Yep.
but like that doesn't mean that there's not other ways to do things, and that's a big part of what the episode is all about.
Yes.
I mean, I can't really speak to that experience because it's not my own,
Hmm.
but I enjoyed what I saw on screen and how it was laid out.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that Skeleton Crew understands Star Wars in a way that a lot of other Star Wars shows or movies haven't necessarily done in the Disney era, simply because, okay, think back to when George Lucas said that Star Wars is for 12-year-olds. Usually, when that's brought
Mhm,
up, people are, bringing it up to excuse the shortcomings of Star
mhm.
Wars recently, being like, it's for 12-year-olds. Why are you expecting good cinema or whatever the fuck?
Yeah.
But what I really think George Lucas means by it's a story for 12-year-olds is that it's a story about the real world, about navigating the real world for people that are just becoming adults, 12-year-olds. They're growing up, they're getting into the real world, they're just like Luke Skywalker in A New Hope. They feel
Mhm.
hopeless. They feel like they've peaked at 19 years old, that life is never going to get better. But ultimately, you can become the hero of the galaxy. Skeleton Crew does this in a very similar way, where they're giving lessons about disabilities and people with differences and how we should celebrate differences instead of trying to make everyone fit into a one size fits all type scenario, because that's not how
Mhm.
we are as human beings. And so I really, really enjoyed that aspect of this episode because it just speaks so much Star Wars to me. Even though Star Wars doesn't necessarily touch on disabilities in the past or differences between people, it still felt very Star Wars just because it was a life lesson for people that are navigating the real world or for people that just need a reminder. We're 22 and 30 years old, but we know we know to celebrate people's differences, but it's always nice to see that reminder in Star Wars from a
Oh,
childlike perspective, especially because the main characters are 12-year-olds.
yeah, for sure, and it honestly, it's like it reminded me that I also just need to be more aware in
Hmm.
my daily life of just because I do things a certain way
Hmm.
doesn't mean that it works for somebody else, and I'm like, "Okay, now I need to actively think about that more often," and you're right, like, you said 30. I'm 31, and even in my 31 years of age, like w- everybody, just starts to think of what works for them, and
Hmm.
it's just nice to have these little reminders, and you never stop learning
Hmm.
unless you choose to.
Exactly.
Um, you have to
Exactly.
make an effort to stop, but I like to think we're always growing and becoming the best versions of ourselves, and that's like at the core of this episode. That's kind of what it was all about. It's just learning that we can all do things differently
Hmm.
and celebrate our differences, and then use them together
Hmm.
to achieve a goal
Right.
where everybody plays their part and everybody's needed for what they can contribute.
Absolutely. And we literally see that play out in the ending when they're all
Mhm.
playing their own role on the ship to get it to escape the trash picker upper machine. I don't know exactly what the
I
fuck you'd
called
call
it.
it, but
I called it the shredder.
the shredder. That's much better than the trash picker upper.
Funny enough, though, I will say that even though this was very on the nose, I really enjoyed the trash crabs,
Yes.
like their name just being trash crab.
Hmm. Trash crabs. And they ultimately were trash crabs
They
because
were trash.
yes,
Ugh.
how dare they try to eat Wim and KB as food? Fuck you. But I also thought it was funny that another Mando project has these crabs. It was very Ahsoka to me. I was
I immediately thought of the Noti people
yes.
as well. However, these ones were a lot smaller and
Yeah.
way less. Oh God, I can't think of the word for it when they're like people like.
Yeah. Personified. I don't know. I know what you mean though.
No.
I know what you mean.
So yeah, it was very much like the Noti people, but
Mhm.
obviously a lot smaller. But then it also kind of reminded me of the ice spiders
Yeah.
in Mando,
Right.
where they had all the little ones, and then the big scary one
Mhm.
comes out at the end to terrorize everyone.
Yeah.
Um,
I was getting very much Wally vibes from all of Lanupa,
oh,
if you think about it,
okay.
because it's like everything's destroyed,
I
everything
was
is
gonna
in
say
trash.
Earth from Wally.
Right, yeah, Earth from Wally. But then like the Lanupa spa that the oh god, what's the mountain called? Skull Ridge Mountain. That to me is like the
The big ship.
yes, the big ship where everything is great and you well, at least you think so, but in reality it's at the cost of destroying everything else on the planet.
Mhm.
So I was getting very much Wally vibes from Lanupa in this episode, especially with like the trash crabs. They were like robot type
It
deal.
was literally like Wally.
Yeah, literally, literally. Also,
Funny enough, I hate that movie.
really, you hate Wally?
At least the first time that I saw it, and then I was like, I'm never watching this again.
Fair
I need to
enough.
rewatch it. I'm such a different person than I was because I've grown,
There
because
you
I've
go.
become a better person, because I've worked on myself, just like the themes of this episode.
Yeah. Well, I sure hope you changed since 2009, but
Yeah, definitely.
so one big thing I wanted to point out for this episode is the cinematography and how well
Mm,
everything was shot, especially on Lanupa. The first opening scene where they escape and they're all together, and Fern, or not Fern, KB is on the ground because she can't move.
when they come out the little,
Exactly.
uh,
Very tragic scene, but also it looked beautiful. I think it looked
yeah.
fantastic. And pairing that with the things we got in this episode, I think it was just beautiful altogether.
No, I agree, and I mean, I'm a little biased because like I want to go to the Skullridge Mountain Spa,
Oh, right.
and it's meant to look beautiful,
Hmm.
but yeah, even in the uglier parts
Yeah.
of Lanupa, even in like the trash dump in the back where the kids end up,
Hmm.
like it was definitely very cool, and it was cool to see more of the environment around like the mountain, and
Hmm.
we talked about the crabs already, but
Yeah.
it was a very interesting place.
Yeah. It's almost got my tinfoil hat gears turning as to why in Skeleton Crew, Bryce Dallas Howard's shots and cinematography looked so good when her last entry in Star Wars was the Lizzo and Jack Black episode of
Oh
Mando
God.
season 3 and how atrocious it looked. It almost makes me wonder like was that not Bryce Dallas Howard's doing? Was there something with the budget? Was there time constraints? Because as we've talked about before, Skeleton Crew had way more time to be in production than anything
Yeah.
else.
Oh God, that just makes me think about the fact that we got Bo Katan in a field
Uh huh. With the dark
fighting.
saber. Ugh.
I know her big dark saber moment. She was in a grass field.
Right. Field day.
Ugh. Not Mandalorian field day.
Also, another thing in this episode that we've been talking about, Steve Urkel lives. He's alive. Jaleel
Oh,
White's pirate character is alive. He ultimately captures Jod, so he wasn't burnt in
yes.
acid.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that because I don't know if you noticed, but obviously they take
Hmm.
Jod back to
Hmm.
Brutus, and Brutus's ship, I'm pretty sure is like the same as the Colossus from Resistance. Not the same
Mm,
like ship, it's not the Colossus,
right.
but it looks very much like that model of space station.
Hmm.
So if you didn't notice that, go back and check it out because I was like, that looks like the Colossus.
I didn't notice that. Like, did they show the outside of the ship or something?
Yeah, it's like a big long ship.
Oh,
Like
wow.
a it's
I mean,
it kind of has the shape of like a steak,
right.
like a vampire steak,
Oh, okay.
which like looks just like, and it might not be the exact same. And there's the translation from animation to live action, but I'm pretty sure it was the same ship as the Colossus. So, Resistance fans,
Hmm.
enjoy your crumbs.
Yeah, because you're not getting very much else. But I think it makes sense because in the actual scene, I was like, are they on a ship? Are they at a location? Like, where are they exactly? And it very much seems like the type of ship that is the Colossus, where it's like
A
basically,
floating space
yeah,
station.
exactly. So that makes total sense to me. That whole scene was funny. I think Jod is such a master manipulator because how
Yeah.
many times has he gotten out of shit by just talking, by just
And
lying?
I love that it doesn't feel like oh, it's another Han Solo.
Right.
Like it's another scoundrel.
Hmm.
Like they have the pirate aspect, and to me, that's enough of a difference
Hmm.
to where I don't feel like it's something that I've already seen a million times.
Right. I think it was very interesting too how it almost seemed like the pirates were gonna be like, all right, yeah, fuck Brutus, we're gonna go with Jod and get this and treasure. But then it was
Yeah,
cut short by the equal time. The hourglass
yeah.
ran out, and that's when Brutus was able to cut him off when he was literally saying, you could go with Brutus and get some measly treasure, or you can go with me and I'll give you the Criffin Galaxy. Um,
The Criffin Galaxy, another Criff bomb. I love it.
yeah, I just think it's funny how Jod is able to talk his way out of everything.
And we got what I would call a space shanty,
Space shanty,
like
explain.
not a sea shanty,
Hmm.
but like a space shanty, a pirate song.
Oh, right, 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 right. Okay, okay. I'm sorry, I don't know what a shanty is, and
I don't know, but a sea shanty is a pirate
right,
song.
the song about the onyx cinder, and yeah, I know what you mean.
And Tack Renon or whatever they were saying, which I
Hmm.
was trying to follow the song, but I was like, maybe they'll release it on Spotify after the
Girl,
season's done. They'll have a full production. I mean, I kind of like that.
I
Not the
guess.
boring, not the version that was in the show, but like a full, like actual version of it where Jude Law is like actually singing, or even whoever. It doesn't have to be Jude Law singing. Just
Right.
I think it'd be cool to get like that little song as like a something when they release all the music eventually from the series,
Yeah.
which there's been a lot of fun music in this series that I've enjoyed, but I think the only thing they've put out is like main
Yeah.
the main music. I'm still waiting for that episode 3 theremin synthy sci-fi
Right.
whatever that
From
was. I'm
Kim's
still
planet.
waiting for it.
Yes.
Mhm.
Speaking of Kim, when
Mhm.
the New Republic showed up, I almost thought that KB had called Kim because you remember at the end of episode 3, she was
Oh
like,
yeah.
"Oh, if anything goes wrong, you can always contact me." And I'm still waiting for that moment to kind of come back up because there's no way that they said all that and then aren't going to have her pop back up. Um,
She's the Jedi. No, I'm just kidding.
oh god, oh god.
Hey, season 1 it was Ventress. Now we're on to the Jedi theory. Whatever. Let me have my fun.
Right. You're right.
This is half my podcast too, you know. Just kidding.
Oh, you didn't say it was
Um
this is my podcast like I did to you in that one episode. um
it's It's very interesting though bringing up the X-wings because at least in my eyes I'm so used to seeing the adults' perspective on Atten where they're like,
mhm,
we can't contact the Republic. So I didn't even think about the fact that, yeah, I'm sure little girl boss
mhm,
manager at
right,
Lanupa dialed the New Republic real quick and she was like, there is some fucking pirates.
right.
I need to get them out of my spot because this is not good for business.
Well, that's the thing is that I realized later on, I'm like, oh, I'm stupid. It wasn't Kim that called them. Lanupa is very clearly attached to the New Republic because think of all the
Mhm.
guards and their silly little
Or just the
hats.
wider in the wider galaxy in general,
Right,
like they're not hiding,
right.
so of course they would dial the New Republic real quick.
But I more mean like they're literally ran by the New Republic, I think, because of
Mm.
the guards. If you look at their hats, it's very similar to like the guards
Oh,
of the New
I
Republic.
see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, except these ones were in green and the New Republic's usually stuck to that blue and white.
Well, there's like room for differences, but I ultimately
For
think
sure.
that the New Republic is in control of this Skull Ridge Mountain.
You know, I just put out the video talking about the banking clan, so I
Right.
was watching a lot of stuff, getting lots of clips from different Star Wars things of the banking clan, and there was a lot of political episodes
Hmm.
of the Clone Wars I had to go through. And I'm saying all this to point out that like I need I need the New Republic Senate in
Hmm.
something
Oh yeah.
because I don't understand. I need more of the politics of the New Republic because,
Right.
like you're saying, there's probably different branches. There's other bases other than Adelphi, but like in my head, every X-Wing person just comes from a Delphi base
Mhm.
on any Mandoverse show, because we don't see any of their military, we don't see any of their politics,
Right.
other than the tiny glimpses we've gotten in the Ahsoka series,
Yeah.
and I guess Mando as well.
Mhm.
But I'm like, let me see them doing something. I feel like that's one big thing that's kind of lacking in general for this era of storytelling.
Yeah,
But
I definitely agree with you. And I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that their Old Republic show of this Mandoverse has been canceled.
Mhm.
And so they're having to like slip it into
Oh,
everything.
you're you're so right. Rangers of the New Republic,
Hmm.
obviously.
Yeah.
Um,
And so,
well, and I'm still thinking we might get a little something by
mhm.
the end of Skeleton Crew,
Oh,
because
yeah.
I ultimately think the New Republic is going to get involved with AT-AT.
Yeah,
But
for sure. And I think that's what is going to make it a Mandoverse show. I think we're going to
mhm,
get away with a Mandoverse show that does not have the Mandalorian. Well, I guess Ahsoka had that too. But you know what I mean. It's not going to
yeah.
be this thing that has to connect. I think that ultimately it's going to tie more into the Imperial Remnant versus New Republic rather than the Mandalorian and Grogu.
Which I think is good,
Yes.
and the way
Hmm.
that they should be doing it.
Yes, because I like the idea that the New Republic and Imperial Remnant is like the overarching theme of these shows and not necessarily
Mhm,
returning characters, because then we get to see different perspectives of like how the New Republic is affecting people, how the Imperial Remnant is
yes,
affecting people. We got to see how it affects Hera and older rebellion leaders. We get to see how it affects the Mandalorian, a bounty hunter that has become a dad now and wants to protect
and a
his
Marshall
kid.
maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're getting to see all these different perspectives, and that to me is a way better storytelling connector than the Mandalorian showing up and everything.
Yeah, or Carson Table like showing up and
Right.
everything. The only thing that sucks is Bob Iger was like, "We're slowing down on streaming." So like now that it finally feels like it's getting its footing
Mhm.
in the type of storytelling it's trying to do with this connected story,
Mhm.
and we know Ahsoka's getting a season 2, and then that's it.
Right.
So
We'll see, because they have said that there's other Star Wars shows in development. Star Wars Celebration 2025, come through and let us know what the fuck is going on.
yeah, there is one last thing we need to talk about,
Okay.
and it is the yesification of the Onyx Cinder at the end of the episode.
Yes. Oh fuck yeah, I thought that was so fucking cool, because again, as I find myself thinking in so many scenarios in so many episodes of this show, I'm like, how the fuck are they gonna get out of this, the
Mhm.
I'm sorry, you called it the shredder. The shredder is latched onto the onyx cinder so
Yeah.
hard that there's literally no moving it. And I'm like, how the
Mhm.
fuck is this going to work? Turns out there's a whole nother ship under the first ship. Um, and
Basically.
it's so cool. It looks so clean, and
Yeah.
everybody benefits because now Disney gets to sell two versions of the onyx cinder.
Yeah, and I don't think the Lego one has a emergency hull demolition sequencer.
Right.
Um, so I don't think it's going to get yesified. But you're exactly right. Now they can sell a second ship and be like, the Onyx. Now it's just the Onyx, no more Cinder. The Cinder's gone.
Right. Or is it
Now
the
it's
opposite?
sleek.
No, you're right. It is just yeah. The second ship would be called the Onyx.
I just made that up in my head. There's no rhyme or reason. I'm just like, Cinder makes me think of like ashes and like cinders,
Hmm.
and so I'm like, an onyx is like a sleek, dark like metal, or that's at least what comes to mind. So I'm like,
Well,
now the new ship.
yeah, that's. I think that was intentional. Like, we have the shiny new ship under,
Oh,
and that's why it's called the Onyx Cinder. I was googling before we before we hopped on. I was like, there's got to be something here. So I was googling the
okay.
definitions of onyx and cinder, and I'm like, okay, I could see there being a connection. If you stretch really hard and maybe pull a muscle, you'll get there.
I love the parallel too of like Wim pushing the button that got them into this mess,
Hmm.
and now Fern had to kind of push the button to get them out of a mess,
Hmm.
which then worked out in their favor. And she was so like, "Don't touch anything before," and then this time she had to be the one to touch the button
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
to actually get them out of the mess, and it was just really criffin cool to see.
Yeah. And like I said, I think it tied into the whole idea of them celebrating their differences and being able to come together in the end, because
Hmm.
Fern is very ambitious. She's been the ambitious one, she's been the one taking charge. So for her to be the
Hmm.
one to press the button that you're never supposed to touch, and that being the thing that leads them out, I thought that was really cool. Because then we also have KB doing her computer magic, which is very much her. We have Wim in the gunner. It's very much him
Hmm.
wanting to fight, even if he's not a great fighter. He wants to, it's in his heart. And
Yes.
we have Neel, who was taught to fly by Jude. And even though he can't really climb, that boy can fly. And I love
That he
it.
can. That he can. And I just loved how they just reassured each other of like, they're like, this is your thing, that's your thing.
Hmm.
And they were like, Neil, you flew before, you're the only one that can do
Hmm.
it. Like I said at the beginning, it was just so heartwarming to see everyone come together in the end and like utilize each of their strengths and the strengths each of them knew that they had that was specific to that person to get them out of the mess that they were in and ultimately to freedom.
Yes, to freedom. I love it. So, where do we think it's going to go from here? I really only have one idea, which I've already said, which is that Jod and the kids are going to reunite once they get to Atten. They're not going to cross paths before then. I think they're just both going to be able to make it to Atten in the next
Yeah.
two episodes.
Well, and we learned in this episode that KB has like the
Hmm.
coordinates in her brain.
Shout out C3PO.
So
Very.
now I don't know how Jod is gonna get there.
He has the
Um
he has the coordinates that.
oh, he has like
Hmm.
the little the little USB
Hmm.
drive. Uh
Yeah, at least I'm assuming that's because like he escaped all the jewelry and such, so I highly doubt he's gonna
yeah.
leave that behind.
Yeah. I mean that lightsaber is gonna come up again, but I'm like, you introduced a lightsaber, but kind of like we already talked about, who are you going to use the lightsaber against unless there's a new character that has something that can be wielded against a lightsaber?
I almost wonder. I don't think they'll do it because I don't think there's a way to execute it without it being cheesy or, God, I hate to use this term, but a little Mary Suey. But Wim, what if Wim and John have a lightsaber duel? But that would be kind of stupid because how would Wim be able to hold him, stand
Maybe
his own ground against John Nawood, presumed Jedi Knight?
well, maybe there was a training remote that they found on the ship, and Wim's been training on
Oh.
the way to and no, oh my god, no, there would have to be somebody else
Mhm.
or a Beskar spear or honestly something cool that they could pull from the EU and that is very in line with the old Republic
Mhm.
is a vibroblade,
Oh, okay.
like having a vibroblade sword go against it, because I don't know if in canon they can deflect lightsabers,
Mhm.
but at least in the EU and specifically in the Knights of the Old Republic games, you could dual wield a vibroblade and a
Mm.
lightsaber. So
Well, there you go. And if they
that
haven't
on
before, they can now. There's no reason that they can't.
well, and we actually saw vibroblades, if you remember, in the beginning of Mandalorian season 2 in the fighting pit. They had like little vibroblade daggers.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there vibro blades in the Bad Batch? Or am I thinking of something else? I feel like
That
there's been a
sounds
few
right.
instances actually where the Bad Batch had them. Um,
That sounds right.
yeah, it's hard to remember though because Bad Batch has like so much world building in it, and we get so many new locations, that it's
Yeah.
hard to keep track. But I think so. If we're correct, there's going to be a little image popped up right next to me in the editing.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that would be the only thing is I don't think there's time to introduce some Jedi or whatever unless there's some Jedi that's been hiding out on At this whole time.
Right,
The supervisor, maybe if it's a person, who knows? But I could see a vibroblade being the next best option. I don't even see the need for them to go to Beskar or something. I
right.
honestly think having a different kind of material would be cooler.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And it's and it's disconnected from the rest of the galaxy, so they could really pull some like really cool random shit out of their ass. So
Yeah.
we'll just have to wait and see. And one last hope that I have for the next episode of Skeleton Crew is that it doesn't release during a holiday, which I think we're
Oh my
safe.
god.
At least a major holiday.
Yeah, 2 holidays back to back.
Hmm.
Like, I love Star Wars. I love watching Star Wars. I love talking about Star Wars with you
Hmm.
and everybody online. However, I miss my holiday break.
I know. I know. We'll see how I feel come Andor season 2 when it releases on my birthday. And we have to
That's
record
true.
the night of my birthday. But it'll be fine.
Well, it's a gift to you, so
Exactly.
it'll be alright. I'm sure it'll be amazing anyway.
Yeah. So hyped. So hyped. Well, Scotty, that was Skeleton Crew episode 6. And if we have nothing else, why don't you send us out of here for the first time of 2025? I'm going to keep saying that.
I clearly. Make sure you follow us on social media at Wayseekers Pod, wherever you get your podcast, so you never miss out on our Skeleton Crew coverage. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.